It's Friday. Work is completely off your mind and you have the whole night to yourself. What would you do? Go to a party with friends, play sports, attend a concert? You want to know what I would do? I would lock myself in my room and endlessly explore the thoughts inside my head in desolate solitude. Sounds awesome, right? I'm what's known as an introvert, a very common type of personality trait. I'm a very shy person. I always feel exhausted when spending time in crowded places. I prefer not to work with others. If you try to talk to me, I may attempt to avoid responding to you. These don't seem like very favorable qualities, and surely if I carry these over into the future, my path to success will be massively hindered. But what if I told you that an introvert like me, who may seem utterly hopeless against facing society, is going to become one of many introverts to represent it? Now you may think, how can that be possible? In most areas in life, extroverts have an advantage over introverts. And in current times where we are facing a torrential pandemic, we need people who are open and willing to serve society without fail. But in reality, it's introverts who are going to become the people to look up to in the future. We first need to understand why introversion should not be underestimated. Whatever the stereotypes may be for introverts, don't let them influence you. They are unimportant and incomplete. And if you're someone in the audience who's an introvert and you may feel limited by who you are in that sense, I'm here to tell you that your personality is so amazing that nobody except yourself can realize it. When we observe people, we always think about how we are different from others, and due to this, we begin to analyze people's personality traits, which imply what kind of person one may be. And it's important to understand that introversion is just one dimension of someone's personality. The 5-factor model personality trait system evaluates someone in terms of their openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. You'll notice one of the traits here is extroversion. So the system thinks that extroversion is a better trait to own. So if you're an extrovert, you will probably score very high in this trait. But if you're an introvert like me, you may not perform as well, because then the system implies, for example, that you are not a very sociable person. However, rarely will people ever score a flat 0 or 100 here, because it is very rare for someone to be either highly introverted or highly extroverted. When I refer to myself as an introvert, I just mean that I score relatively low on the extroverted trait. If I had to guess, I'd say I'm about 70 to 80% introverted. So I do in fact have an extroverted side that I use sometimes. And knowing this is very important when evaluating the intensity of someone's personality traits. And hopefully this silences any stereotypes existing that imply that introverts are always extreme introverts and that they can't get past any limitations they or other people may think they have. The term outside world I relate to the most because for me, you, the audience, is living on Earth. But I'm not permanently inhabiting Earth. I've just come here to make my speech, and once I retreat back to my solitude, I've gone back to my home world, where the only one living there is me. Introverts like myself can sometimes hate this sense of loneliness, but it's a very good thing because in current times where everyone's being forced to isolate themselves, introverts are already familiar with these lonely environments. And this idea that introverts move between two different worlds, not just one, means that the people only living on this world are going to be so amazed by the deep level of imagination and creativity from another, simply because they have never been there before. Now, we need to face some facts here. In most countries, there's a somewhat even spread of introverts compared to extroverts, but the spread becomes uneven when we look at the difference in happiness levels between the two personality traits. Back in the late 1900s, Hans Eysenck, who was a renowned British physiologist, stated that extroversion and happiness rely on each other. And recent surveys completed focusing on undergraduates from around the world have in fact shown that it's extroverts who actually feel happy more of the time than introverts do. In school, a lot of times I feel unsatisfied with my grades and I always hammer myself for not doing well in them, even though in the eyes of others, my grades might be amazing. And a nuisance like this can become much worse if I continue to dwell on it. And it will, as a result, transfer over into other environments such as the workplace, because less happiness means less motivation, productivity, and self-assurance. And speaking of the workplace, it's where extroverts can inherit a common advantage over introverts. Things such as intense social interactions and open office spaces can make introverts sometimes prone to overstimulation. And it's because of small overlooked aspects such as these that make people think that extroverts are more suitable as leaders. So the general outlook on introversion is somewhat bleak, but let's look at today, like right now. Society is changing fast, and surely much faster than ever before. And it's these changes that are truly going to make introverts the most prominent figures in the future. And what I mean by this is that there's going to be more introverts than extroverts. They'll be able to compete with extroverts more easily. They'll have more opportunities to become successful. And most importantly, introversion will no longer be labeled as a detestable personality trait by any stretch of the mind. It'll be looked up to instead. 2020, in my opinion, was the year of the introvert, mostly due to the pandemic occurring right now, because it has drastically affected young people. The Globe and Mail recently surveyed thousands of Canadian teenagers, and the common theme that emerged was the mental challenge of having to adapt to new living conditions, not being able to spend time with friends, feeling troubled and uneasy more often, and living in the fear of their family or themselves contracting with the virus. Being at this group of teenagers is really one of the most important age groups in society. How will they face the pandemic? The answer lies in if they will value their social lives even more after being abruptly cut from them and remain as extroverts, or if they will choose to inherit a simple and quiet life and become introverts if they haven't already. Psychological studies completed by multiple universities have told us that people are either able to freely overcome and adapt to the pandemic, or they are rendered defenseless and have to constantly fan away the horrid flames that are unpleasant feelings. So while most people may be suffering from having to confine to utter solitude, lots of introverts have already inhabited that same solitude for a long time and can adapt to it with ease. I remember feeling no difficulty when transitioning from physical to online education. Most students I knew were finding it hard to sync themselves with these new work environments and rituals, which ultimately hindered the preservation of their well-being. But for me, I felt even more efficient than ever because I was always working within the comfort of my own world, with no distractions that I must face. And this aligns perfectly with a survey done by Statistics Canada, who discovered that for people aged 12 to 17, 14% that their mental health worsened, while 60% stayed the same, and 26% said their mental health was actually better than ever before. And it's highly likely that those people were introverts. And it's strengths like these that make them much more extraordinary than meets the eye. Briefly looking back into the past, into the industrial age, people physically came together to do work. It was always a hands-on experience. Inevitably, as we progress further into the digital age of technology, we're going to end up seeing a lot less of that. Technology nowadays allows things such as virtual collaboration and leadership, which reduces social gatherings but can free introverts from the potential burden of directly interacting with others, thereby becoming more confident and focused. And this is why I think that COVID-19 is such a good precursor of the future, because it demonstrates that people can be just as or even more productive when working from the comfort of their own home. And if young people like me are to grow up in a future where we'll always be interacting with and developing technologies as smart as us, introversion will become the dominant personality trait to them. Despite all the negative things that exist about introverts, the one positive thing that exists is that they are already having monumental impacts on our world. They're running vital corporations, empowering our economies, creating new technologies that transform civilizations, granting us success. And we've seen prominent examples of famous introverts from the past who've already done these sorts of things. Albert Einstein, he was an introvert who created the backbone for modern physics. He once said, "The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulate the creative mind." Rosa Parks, an American activist who became the mother of civil rights movements and defeated racism, she was an introvert. And great leaders like Abraham Lincoln, who indulged himself in literature and redefined the United States forever, he too was an introvert. And what's more impressive is the fact that in the past, poor mental health was an insurmountable fear. So it was hard being introverted many years ago. But these people, instead of abandoning the one trait that defines them, they embraced their introversion, and they unlocked outstanding achievements that we still respect to this day. And introversion is still just as prevalent now. Steven Spielberg, one of the most successful directors in the film industry. Michael Jordan, one of the many great faces of basketball. Barack Obama, one of the most unique presidents that the United States has ever seen. And Queen Elizabeth, the symbol of the United Kingdom. All of these famous icons are forced into extroverted activities every day, yet they still retain their introversion. These are people who truly see the big picture, think deeply and creatively, and most importantly, are not afraid to be themselves. It's people such as these that make introversion invaluable to modern society. And if we are to face countless more big problems like we are right now in the future, it's the creative thinkers and the people who are fearless against the essence of a changing world that'll be the ones to fix it. One last thing I'd like to touch on is why the future needs introverts. We don't know precisely what the future will look like, but what we do know is that technology is already allowing people to lead from their own computer. And what we do know about the future is that technology is going to have an even bigger role to play, and introverts are going to help technology fulfill that role. With current global issues occurring, such as global warming and COVID-19, humans need to partner with technology to lessen them. And the way I see it, technology is an introvert's greatest companion. When I spend time alone, I have no problem letting technology invade my world because I am in control of it. So instead of taking away from my world, technology adds to it because I can manipulate it to my own personal liking. And the more technology has an influence on me, the more I want to experiment with it, which is why I love to build computers and design digital models. My strong relationship with technology springs from the typical standard of introverts developing very strong bonds of things they express feelings of admiration and interest towards. And this strong bond helps to make technology a part of me. So whenever I present my creations to the world, they have my personality attached to it, sometimes representing a side of me that I've kept hidden. This strong relationship also explains why the majority of historic figures who have invented the most interesting of innovations are introverts as well, because their bond with technology is on a very deep and intense level exclusive to introverts. So introverts are going to become an integral part of accelerating the evolution and usefulness of technology in the future. Now, you may think that there's always the possibility that if technology becomes more important than ourselves, it's going to do more harm than good. This brings me to another thing that introverts are very good at, which is knowing their own limits. On days when I have nothing to do and I busy myself with my technological surroundings, I realize I'm spending too much time alone, and I get really fed up, actually, and force myself to step into the outside world. So when introverted innovators of the future reach a point where technology is their only companion, they'll experience an epiphany and realize that what they're doing is really just harming the qualities that make them human. As a result, they'll start over, going back to the roots of their desires and finding more ethical ways to express themselves and benefit people. So these periodic moments of realization are greatly going to help introverts from stopping themselves from destroying themselves. And since extroverts already need lots of real-world connections, they will also be a big contributor in ensuring that technology does not take over the world. Similar to having strong bonds with technology, introverts also develop deep relationships with humans as well. Even though I know and interact with so many people in my life, I keep few what I determine as true friendships. For example, at school, I hang out with the same small group of 4 to 5 people every day, and that pattern never changes because I choose to keep it that way. Because these people I deem as very close friends, full of common traits that I hold, such as trust, sympathy, and loyalty. Something like this is very precious because if there are to be much less social interactions in the future, any friendships that introverts hold right now will be very devoted and long-lasting. So if anyone ever feels that they are alone, there will always be someone who cares for them. And since this pandemic is already making people grasp the true value of friendship, the world will be more connected than ever. The biggest reason why I think introverts are needed in the future is to become the example for others, the benchmark for leadership, the foundation of inspiration and passion, the symbol of being human. If introversion is going to become a common personality trait, and introverts are going to become a common type of person, introverts are going to become more than just plain introverts. An important necessity in the future is guidance. We don't want to literally end up destroying our planet and living in fear and depravity. We need introverts to be the pinnacle of guidance. All that time spent alone helps introverts grow. They know how to be independent when they need to be. They live in their own world, and because of that, they always contribute something new and meaningful to society. They may have boundaries in some aspects of their lives, but their creativity and determination have none. And even if right here is considered the outside world that introverts must gain the courage to step out into every time, that just shows how strong and capable they are. We need people like this in the future. People who are prepared to face the world. There are some things I wish I could do better as an introvert, but I've realized now that I have no reason to regret who I am, because being an introvert in modern society is a gift. It's a gift that for a long time seemed like a punishment, but now if you're an introvert, you have so much to look forward to. Because it's introverts who will become the greatest leaders, find solutions to the most daunting of problems, fill the world with inspiration and hope, become the face of the future. So if you're an introvert or someone with a quiet personality and you don't like that, don't ever try to change yourself, because you can become greater beyond your own imagination.